high holidays are an answer. The high holidays come and say, whatever it is, leave it outside. It's not about here. This is not only a sanctuary of place, it is a sanctuary of time. Here is where the Jew regenerates. We live at a time pervaded by cynicism and pessimism. The Jewish tradition is all about idealism and optimism. And we come in here, and all of a sudden, we're surrounded by an ethos and by a community of lovely people who are at their core still idealistic, optimistic. It is also what the Jewish tradition has done with this day. It is so fascinating. If you ask most people, where does Passover come from? They will tell you the Torah. If you ask people, where does Yom Kippur come from? They will tell you the Torah. Where does Sukkot come from? The Torah. Where does Shavurot come from? The Torah. And they're right. And then you ask them, where does Rosh Hashanah come from? And they say, the Torah, and they're wrong. It is a stroke of Jewish genius. Rosh Hashanah is not a biblical holiday. The first of Tishri is. But in the Torah, it's never called Rosh Hashanah. It's never the New Year. It doesn't celebrate the creation of humanity, the creation of Adam, the human being, male and female, both created in the image of God. An extraordinary idea, a revolutionary idea. In its time, only kings were in the image of God or came from God. Pharaoh was God. There are other religious traditions when the Godhead, the human being, is an expression of the Godhead. In the Jewish tradition, everybody has intrinsic dignity, value, and worth. And we're told on Rosh Hashanah, remember the idealism, remember the humanity, remember the optimism, because the rabbis believe, and it's the Jewish leap of faith. The Jewish leap of faith is not about God. The real leap of faith is about human nature. What our tradition believes is capable, what human beings are capable of. And what we find in the Torah ultimately comes down to the foundations of America. This extraordinary document which begins, we hold these truths to be self-evident. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm always shocked that a Jew didn't write that. Because everything about it comes out of the Jewish tradition. It comes out of the book of Genesis. It is not obvious. It's a statement of faith in the goodness of people. And the Jewish tradition believes people have extraordinary capacity to be good. And on Rosh Hashanah, one of the questions, one of the things that drives the Jew into a service is to have another insight. What does the Jewish tradition teach us about how to be a good, lovely person? By the way, That's what Judaism is. Judaism is all about becoming and being more a lovely human being. And I've said this to you so many times, and I reflect upon this with Ruth so many times. This room is filled with lovely people who do extraordinarily lovely things, loving, lovely things for other people. It is what makes this a holy room. It's not holy because of the Torah or an ark or a rabbi. It's made holy by you, who are so lovely. And the tradition then comes and says, but look for ways to be even lovelier. Look for ways to be lovelier. And then the Jewish tradition asks, how's that done? What's the Jewish expression for loveliness and being a lovely person? And there is a Hebrew word. By the way, you know, it's very hard to translate one language directly into another. Languages have nuances. They are born out of the life experience of the people, the society that speaks that language. We understand it about others. So, for example, we've all heard native Alaskans have 50 words for snow. For us, it's snow. It's not snow for a native Alaskan. For people who live in the northern parts of Russia and Scandinavia, there are 180 words for ice. Because every single one of those words tells the people living there how they survive with it, use it, and become better for it. So there are words in Hebrew which also are very hard to translate. And one of the words is the word we've used a number of times already today. And the word is Chesed. We just read the Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen Va Chesed, V'Rachamim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Va'anenu, Asei Imanu, Tzedakah V'Chesed. So what is Chesed? And for a long time, by the way, there was no English word that captured the essence of Chesed. It was in 1525, a translator named Clovedale was doing a translation of the Hebrew Bible, and he coined an English term that refers to Chesed. Up till then, people had sort of called it kindness. And if you understand Hebrew, it's bigger than kindness. And the words that now are used to translate Chesed are loving kindness. It's one thing to be kind. It is required of us to be loving kind. Lovingly kind. Chesed is loving kindness. And what is that? The rabbis describe it. Rashi does a commentary on it. It's sort of like tzedakah. You know tzedakah? Which is normally translated as charity. All these words are incomplete translations. Tzedakah comes from the word tzedek, to be righteous. How do you live righteously vis-a-vis another person? And how do you help them through all of their life, especially if they are without. And what Rashi says is that Chesed is tzedakah, where you care about the person you're helping. That it's possible to do tzedakah in the male. You can't ever do Chesed in the male. Chesed has to be face to face, eye to eye, person to person, where a relationship is also built. And that's the other genius of the Jewish tradition. It's all about relationship and building strength of relationship. And in the Jewish tradition, when one does Chesed, there's another phrase which the Mishnah uses and the rabbinic tradition uses. It extends the word Chesed to Gmilut chasadim. Gmilut chasadim. Gmilut chasadim, again, very hard to translate. The plural of Chesed is chasadim. The way it's normally translated is to do acts of loving kindness. The Jewish tradition understands it doesn't care what you believe. It doesn't care how principled you are. It cares only how do you actualize, how do you treat, how do you live, how do you behave in relationships to others in which you upbuild and sustain. Every time an individual is engaged in Gmilut chasadim, it's an act that in some way enhances the life of someone else. And in the Jewish tradition, in Pirkei Avot, which we study for Slichot, there's a line that says, the world is sustained by only three things. And of those three, one has to do with human behavior. Only one. The most important thing a person can do to sustain the world, what's that mean? To sustain society, is Gmilut chasadim. Pirkei Avot, the world is sustained by Gmilut chasadim, by finding ways to do things that give kindness, express kindness to other people. And what's that? It's not so much, the rabbis say, a gift. It's not so much a gift of money. Of all the things that we can do, there's Gmilut chasadim. It is to make another person feel better about themselves. Gmilut chasadim, from the word chesed, is a word spoken to another that makes them feel that they're the best in the world. It's a compliment. It's praise. It's enriching who they are and their sense of self, affirming who they are. Every time a person says something that affirms and encourages and strengthens and expresses love, that's Gmilut chasadim. There are acts of Gmilut chasadim. It's not about putting a check in the mail. It's about going to a home where there's shiva with a plate of food. And then it's coming day after shiva ends with a meal for the family that's struggling to put their lives back in order. That's Gmilut chasadim. Gmilut chasadim is going to a wedding or a bar mitzvah or a brit milah dancing with the kala, celebrating with the new parents. Because if we're not there, there's no simcha. Gmilut chasadim is helping create a simcha for people in their lives. And perhaps the most important part of Gmilut chasadim in the Jewish tradition is being with people who are in pain and who are suffering and are dealing with real challenges of life, sometimes seem overwhelming. We've talked about it before. The insight of the book of Genesis is that in this very good world that God created, the only thing that's not good is it is not good for man to be alone. We can face anything when we're surrounded by people who love us and hold us up, emotionally and physically. What we can't do is face it alone. Gmilut chasadim is making sure nobody faces it alone, that they know we're with them. And sometimes it's no more than our being there. Sometimes there are no words appropriate, adequate. Sometimes words even get in the way. And sometimes people are afraid to go to a house where there is some kind of grieving because they won't know what to say. The Jewish tradition says, say nothing, just be there. One's presence sustains and opens up possibilities for people who are struggling. And when I was growing up, I don't know how much this is true for you, there were images we had. They came from really, now that I think of it now, insidious family sitcoms and television programs which suggested what a real, healthy, loving family was. It was Ozzie and Harriet. It was Donna Reed. It was Father Knows Best. Except it was all a lie. And it took us time to catch up with the lie. And one of the things we must understand is, whatever pains we have in our own lives, people all over the world, people all over this town, people all over this room are going through similar things. Every family has a story. Every person has a story. Life is just complicated. And somebody made it sound like it should be so easy. If we do the right thing, everybody would grow up happy and love each other and do exactly what we want. And they'll be happy too. The Jewish tradition never talks that way. The Jewish tradition never talks about happily ever after. There's never happily ever after in the Jewish tradition. There's idealism, there's optimism, there's faith in people, but at every wedding we break the glass to remind this new couple that as wonderful as this day is, the same wine they drank from in joy, that glass that they drank from has now been shattered, and the challenge they will face as a married couple is when there are shattering moments in their life. Will they hold hands as tightly as they did when they drank the wine? It's al kol eleh. The Jew embraces the bitter and the sweet and makes of life the best possible world for himself and his family, herself and her family. And the ultimate word that Gmilut Chasadim evokes is the word comfort. There is nothing holier, nothing grander than comforting someone who is in pain. We know it's true because we've been in pain ourselves. And we know what being comforted, what a miracle it is when people who love us comfort us. And we know there's nothing better we can do for our family, for people we love, for our friends, and for our community, if not for our world, than to bring comfort wherever we possibly can. That is Milut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness that bring comfort to other people. And if one says, what are the high holidays all about? The high holidays are all about, we're starting a new year together. Are we as lovely as we can be? As lovely as the people in this room are? Is there any room still for growth of loveliness? For all of us, being aware of Gmilut Chasadim and its important value in our tradition. At the center, the world is sustained, we're told, by Gmilut Chasadim, not by tzedakah, by Gmilut Chasadim. And as we prepare for this new year, that's the vision. The vision is, how do we comfort as best we can, anytime and every time we can? What moments do we miss? What phone calls aren't we making? What visits are we not making? How are we not including people who we love who are alone? Everyone has fears. Everyone is frightened at some point, and everyone knows loneliness at some point. When people we love are frightened or lonely, are we there to comfort them? Gmilut chasadim, chesed, not kindness, loving kindness. And so what I tried to do this year is find an image that conveys this Jewish insight, this insight of Gmilut Chasadim, that to be a lovely person is to be extraordinarily kind and comforting. And it takes work, by the way. Practice does help. Although I am convinced it is easier to become a lovely person than a first-class violinist. It is easier to become a lovelier person than to learn a foreign language. It is easier to be a lovely person than to learn how to play chess or bridge. You never learn how to play bridge. We can learn what it is to be lovely. We can be lovelier. We can comfort. We can be of comfort by what we say to people, a touch, and just by giving our presence. And our presence, by the way, is as close as we ever come to bringing the Shekhinah into the lives of those we love. Remember, the Shekhinah is only simply described as the presence of God. You can't see the Shekhinah. You only sense in some ethereal way that there's more to life, that one is in harmony with life when one does something lovely for another human being. We bring God into this world not as some deus ex machina, not as somebody who can be manipulated with sacrifices or even with prayer. That's not what God's about to the Jew. But it is the reality that there's something here demanding of us to do gmilut chasadim. So I want to show you my image. We'll see if it works for you. My image for gmilut chasadim. And I'm now talking from me when I look at this picture. It's not clear to me who's who. It only is clear to me what's happening. Every one of us sometimes is that upper hand. And every one of us sometimes is that lower hand. There are times when every one of us needs desperately to be comforted. And there are times when we know people we love, they need to be comforted. Sometimes we're the lower hand. Sometimes we're the upper hand. But one thing this picture for me says is, somebody is comforting someone in the most gentle, loving way. May this be the theme of the holidays as we enter 5777. May it be a year we give this thought and see if there are ways in word, in deed, and most of all, in presence. Being present for people who need us. It can't be done without human interaction. And it changes both people. They're never the same again. Always for the better. May this be our prayer this year. May each of us find within us the ability to yet be more lovely, more lovingly kind. And may all of us find ways to do gmilut chasadim that we will help sustain this world. And we all say,
Be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.